Rama Rama Hare Hare. Okay, let me set up the recording on both systems here.
Recording in progress.
All right, so thank you all for attending. I'm sorry we got off to a late start because of all kinds of technical difficulties. I have never done this before, and to be honest, I didn't think it was going to work, but it appears to be working. It appears to be working. Let me see if, instead of seeing the whole vMix setup, which is very confusing, I can just do I'll do a full screen. We'll see if that works. No, that doesn't do it. Okay, so now that's a little better. We've got the video feedback where we've got millions of me's going back into infinity. And I'm right in front of the computer screen, which I shouldn't be. Let me see if I can get this to come out of the way.
This device is active right now?
Was that right? That's live. So if you all want to say something, don't just speak, but pick that, not the blue thing, but the little thing, and speak into that. That way, it will be recorded. I have no idea whether this is going to sound reasonable or not. The video looks good, but the sound is anybody's guess. Now, you have a book. When did you get a book? The last time you took it.
When Tulsi.
Right.
I was doing Nectar of Devotion, but now I'm here for Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to quickly put down everybody's attendance here.
What has the Nitana Prabhu just called?
What did he call about?
He just told me to add my name.
What's that?
Add my name.
Well, that's obvious now, right? You're sitting here in the class.
September.
Okay. So I wanted you all to have some idea of how the setup will work. You might have seen already that we have come on. We're set up for these dates. Oh, come on. Here we go. So these are our dates here. And this is, of course, on the... what's that?
9?
Yeah, today is 9.
16?
You can't see anything there.
Yeah, but date is not the big deal, so at least.
What's that?
Like, we don't look at the green things, we just look in the date.
Those are the dates, the green things.
Yes, the green of the...
Yeah, so 9th and 10th, 16th and 17th, 23rd, 24th, 30th and 31st. I looked, there's no Govardhan Hill that happens on any of those days. Thanksgiving is after those days, so there's no, as far as I can tell, no big festivals happening any of those days, so we should be able to keep the schedule. And Jeroen mentioned that he would like to have it back at the 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock.
Yes,
Does everybody have that same feeling? Or?
yes, Maharaj, because we have
That's what it was before. It was
Yes.
10 to
Yes.
1 instead of,
Yes.
because,
Maharaj,
yeah.
it's possible even earlier, but then it's okay.
Oh, okay. So, who we got? Somebody else coming. Oh, here's David Dominer. Okay, so, all right. So, we are going then to,
Next class.
so let's take a vote. So, anyone who wants to go to the earlier slot, the 10 to 1 o'clock slot, raise your hand. But if you do that, don't then get late.
That's the
Right, we'll talk just a minute about how I'm going to handle attendance. So the 10 to 1 o'clock slot, raise your hand. I have to see what's going on our Zoom people too, because they count also. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know what Bhaktivatsal and Jairade are saying because they're completely dark and I can't see them or hear them.
Maharaj, I'm okay with 10 o'clock match or the later one, I'm okay.
Okay, Jairade too? You're okay either way? Okay.
Okay with either time.
Okay. So we've got 2 on the fence, and you've got 3 that want it, and 2 that.
either way.
Maharaj,
Either way is fine.
I have exception, lead exception,
What's that?
if you allow me. As I drive from Bronze, sometimes on the way, as I drive from Bronze, so on the way sometimes it's little traffic, so I join in the Zoom. I don't be late to join it. Maybe physically I'll be like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So
Because
you'll
to find
join
a
on
parking
Zoom
also,
and then make
find a parking also is very hard. So
Okay.
I will be 10 o'clock and then physically too.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, then let's move it to the 10 to 1 o'clock slot. Today is 11 to 2, but normally it'll be 10 to the 1 o'clock slot. I don't mind doing that. Today was a lot of running around and trying to get all the loose ends, and still we don't have all the loose ends pieced together. This is the Bhakti Sastri course thing. You will get this. Everybody has joined the WhatsApp group. Now, you're not on the WhatsApp group, not the new one. You're on the old one. You're not on
Yes. Not this one too.
this one too.
Because I took the class from the Tulsi Prabhu.
Let me see if that's
Just
in.
created another one.
Oh, just?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Only for Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, I didn't know you.
Yeah.
Just add me one.
So, Bhagavad Gita study. Let's see who's on there.
Maharaj says number.
Yeah, we've got me, Tulsi, Arjuna. We've got Bhagavan Narahari, Bhaktivatsala, David Damodar. Gopal Champu is not going to show, I don't think. Jai Radhe. We've got Yoran.
I'm not there, Mom.
Marcus isn't here. Pushpanjali's here. Samantha didn't show up. But you're not on there.
No, just give me the number. I will add.
I have to add you. What's your number? You're
Gokuleshwari.
what's that?
Gokuleshwari.
Gokuleshwari, right. So let me see if I can add you really quick here. Oh, come on. Says I have to invite you to the group. I don't know why it does that. I've got Gokuleshwari now. Are you on? I just added you, I think.
Oh, I think so.
You got it? I don't see it. No.
Join group.
Oh yeah, you have to join it. I don't know why it does that sometimes. Sometimes it just joins people, other times. She's in? There she is. I see her showing up. Okay, good. So now you're on. Good. So this is our overall schedule here. And we will do 6:30 to 8 on Mondays, and it'll only be Zoom. Zoom, no people showing up here because everybody works on Mondays. So that's the way it was. So it'll be 6:30 to 8 on Mondays, and we'll do 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock on Sundays. Now Sundays will be 2 programs. In other words, we do an hour and a half, then 15-minute break, and then another hour and a half. But on Mondays, just 1 program, 1 hour and a half program. Before you talk, please. Sometimes you may have to move that little thing.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. I have a question about Monday. Will you physically be in one of the rooms here? No, you won't be.
I'll be in my room doing it
You'll
on
be in
Monday.
your room.
It was much easier than setting up down here.
I understand. Thank
But
you.
I'm surprised we've got 5 people. That's way more than I expected for an actual live turnout. That's good. And we have another 3 people online. Okay, so that's good.
Thank you.
Okay. So this that you're seeing here that's hard to read, you'll see this on WhatsApp. So that's my way of communicating with everybody is through WhatsApp. So these slides that are on PowerPoint, I turn them into PDFs and then I upload them to WhatsApp. And so you will have these, the new version of them immediately after we get finished with the class, so you can see them. And that way you can always look at the slide to know when we will wind up going to the next session, So there's nothing very odd about it, One of the things I do want to mention is that we will have 2 tests. And we will do a test over chapter 1, 2, and 3. And then we will do a test over chapter 4, 5, and 6. So we will do both tests because I find that to have somebody go through the entire 6 weeks and then try to remember what happened on the first week is really sketchy. So instead we'll do 2 tests which cover half of the material. So when will that test happen? It will happen on the 23rd of this month, October. You will see that right on the screen here, the closed book test. All the reds are tests. Closed book, closed book.
Maharaj, analogy will be included too?
What's that?
Analogy?
Yeah. So there'll be questions and analogies, at least 1 or 2 analogies. And during the session, we will have my fake tests, which I call them. A fake test is a test, but you won't get any grade for it. So if you mess it up, it'll be okay, but don't try to mess them up. So the tests will be true and false, and they will be done on Google Docs so that you will immediately get your grade, because that Google Doc will, like a nice robot, grade your test immediatamente right after you take it, and then you'll know how you did on it. And you'll have one today. Hey, you didn't even know. Right. So I get diabolical when I get.
Will you have a test today?
Yes, you have a test. It'll be a fake test. So that's why I tell you that you should read beforehand. I don't know did any of you read chapter 1? I mentioned that on. Okay.
I did not finish all things. I read many times. Yesterday I studied few of the verses. Not didn't finish.
Okay, so. Oh, good, good. So, good. So everyone read, and because we'll be discussing chapter 1 today. That'll be in session 2. The first session here is more or less orientation. We're going to talk about the overall lay of the course, how it'll work, what the objectives are, why we do things the way we do them, you know. By the way, I didn't think of this thing, you know. It was done by those people in the VIHE and MIHE, wherever they are, in England or in Mayapur or Vrindavan. Or, those are the people you really have to put the Molotov cocktails to. They're the ones that thought of it. You know, I'm just sort of carrying out the instructions. But the way that it works is that you know, in our everyday Hare Krishna course, you go in and you see somebody speaking and you listen to some of it and you snooze through a little bit of it maybe, and you're thinking about prasadam, and then it's over, and the next time you go to class, somebody else is talking about something entirely different. And I mean, you do learn something about Krishna consciousness that way, but you don't get a systematic understanding of the philosophy, which is what Bhakti Sastri is trying to do. You know, I know that when you all went to school, you had a horrible time. When you went to high school, when I went to high school, I had a horrible time. So I'm with you, my heart bleeds. I know what it's like, you know, it was terrible. And you had to do all kinds of things and take tests constantly. And I'm afraid there's a lot like this, you know, in this. We're going to have homework. You're going to have to memorize slokas, and then you're going to have to answer quizzes and tests. But when it goes back and forth like that, then you actually remember things. And you remember them for a long time, you know, like Gokuleshwari has been with us for a long time here, and so has Bhagavan Narahari, you know, they've gone through a lot of it. So you begin to learn how the Bhagavad Gita is similar to what's said in the Hari Bhakti, Isopanisad and the Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, you know, all these different books. There are similar things being said. Krishna consciousness is not, and I repeat, Krishna consciousness is not like a cookbook with thousands of recipes, and all those recipes are different. Actually, Krishna consciousness is like a mesh of ideas that fit together. And when you read enough of them, you begin to realize how Krishna consciousness fits together. And you begin to realize what's more important and sometimes what's not so important. And actually, about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, the GBC voted to allow the Shastra Advisory Committee, the SAC it's called, SAC, Shastric Advisory Committee, recommended a course called Hermeneutics. And that course is all about the process of recognizing how the scriptures fit together, you know, especially what's more important and what's eternal, and what's based on what's eternal, but maybe time, place, and circumstance, you know. So I don't want to get into a whole long explanation of that, but I just wanted to touch on that. Because the more you know about Krishna consciousness, the less mysterious it is. And you begin to see and understand all the different things, why we do what we do, why we say what we say. We're not just like crazy religionists that just spout things because somebody told us to, you know, that it's reasonable. There's reasons behind what we do. And this is what Bhakti Sastri is attempting to do, to get us to the point where we can actually understand the reasons behind why we do what we do, why we say what we say. So this is our project that we're working on here. Now, a little more, if on our Zoom...
Maharaj, one more question. I would like to know, sorry. I would like to know what essay we should write.
What's that?
Essay.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to essays yet. We will talk about them. So the idea that I wanted to find out was, so in our Zoom attendees here, people on Zoom, do you all have workbooks? Do you? I guess Jeroen says he does. But does Bhaktivatsal and Jairade, do you both have workbooks?
They had when we did the class together.
What's that?
They had the they had the book when we did the class together.
Oh, so they had.
So far I know if they don't. Okay, Bhakti should be
Yes, Maharaj, we have it. We have it, Maharaj. We have it.
You have, okay. So at least at this point, there's nobody here that you have one, right? Okay, so everybody has one. At least there's a couple of people who didn't show, but everybody has one here.
Maharaj, can I say something, Maharaj?
Yeah, please.
All the students, Maharaj, are more clear. Their sound is like voice is more clearer than you. Can you just keep a little bit more closer?
Oh, you say my voice is lower?
Yeah, little lower, Maharaj. Like
Okay.
When they speak, they are like more clear than you. But
Oh.
you might have to now put on the headphones.
Okay, so let me turn my volume up. Let me figure out which one I am. Everybody don't talk except for me right now, so I can tell which microphone I'm coming into. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay. Is that any better?
No, Maharaj, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's clear, but it's just like how somebody is standing very far, some distant voice.
Very distant.
What about this, Prabhuji? Is it better?
No,
Roji, when you speak, it's super clear.
Maybe Maharaj, you want to switch this one with the.
let me just see if I can fix it. Then, how about now? Is that any better?
No, Maharaj.
No.
Same thing.
It looks like it was number 5. Number 5.
Can you hear
When
me?
you were Hare
I
Krishna.
can hear you, Maharaj.
Is that any better?
No.
No, no better. Okay. All right, then let me switch microphones with because I can't figure out why.
Oh, this is something like now I have to lower the volume.
Maharaj is going to take this one.
What's that? Yeah, hand me that one. No. Keep the that recorder.
Put it out.
Yeah. Can you unclick them from each other? Got it?
Drop this one here.
Okay. Now clip that one where the other one was. And Bhaktivatsal, how is that? Really? I'll have to figure out what's the issue here.
I don't know, Maharaj, it looks like I'm standing next to you.
Okay, so now I'm super clear. Okay, great. All right, so now, since everybody's got a book, okay, so what I wanted to talk about now, we've talked a little bit about the times, we've talked about the dates. I want to talk about how your score will be actually arranged, and your score will be arranged mostly based on, believe it or not, your essays. You'll have to write 2 essays, and the biggest part of your score comes from that. Now, that's not my idea, that's the MIHE came up with that. The essays, you'll see that there is a system to them, and we'll go there. These are listed in your book, by the way, your student handbook. These are the questions that you can choose from. You have to choose 2 questions from these essays. I won't get into reading them here because there's a lot of them, and the only thing I want you to do is understand that there's a bunch of different questions you can choose from. Now, here is the actual way that you need to deal with your essays. What's that? The page your essays are on is in your workbook.
I got it.
You find it?
28.
28?
Oh no, this is not the question. This is a question.
Those are the other
Those are
questions.
questions.
There's somewhere, because I didn't make them. What's that?
Page 33.
33?
Oh, this is the open book assessment.
Yeah, right. Okay, right. So they're on page 33. But this is what I want you all to focus on here. When writing essays, be sure to include references. So don't just write off the top of your head, Say, I say this, and that's in Bhagavad Gita it says this. But on the other side of the coin, don't just cut and paste, where you aren't saying anything. You're just clipping from Bhagavad Gita. And please use quotes from the literature itself, from Bhagavad Gita. Don't say, my Guru Maharaj said this, and a sannyasi came and he spoke about that, I can't reference those things. I have no idea who the sannyasi was or what your guru said or any of those kind of things. So please just use references from the books. You can actually take, you can copy the verse number and all that. There's no problem there. But you need to use references. And you don't have to necessarily clip, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 16, it says this, and then, you can just put Bhagavad Gita 2:16, and then explain it in your own words, or take a tangent off what Bhagavad Gita says. But you need to use references, and you need to use examples and analogies. This is what your essay will be graded on. And remember, as I just said a minute ago, this is where most of your grade comes from. The biggest chunk of your grade comes from the essays, because it means you are able to remember, understand, and be able to write something or produce something that explains Krishna consciousness. That's what we want people who take Bhakti Sastri to be able to do. So, as I say, do not copy and paste from the book. You can copy the references. Do not collaborate with somebody else. This is cheating. It's supposed to be you.
Maharaj, if I want to bring any verse on my explanation from Bhagavad Gita, then especially the meaning of this verse, which is written in their 2-3 lines. So can I take that at least?
Yeah.
And then discussion I can take from this book, but it should be my own idea.
Right. Because, you have some people who you get an essay from and there's nothing original in it at all. It's just cut and paste, from this part of Bhagavad Gita, from that part of Srimad Bhagavatam, from this part of, something else. And they haven't said anything. Then you've got the other side of the coin where somebody just rambles on and they never mention any scriptures, So neither of those is right. You have to find a happy medium between that. And, try to develop a narrative or a story. Try to be logical and sequential. Try to keep it between 600 and 2,000 words. Don't feel necessarily shorter is better, but no more than 2,000 words. And if the question has parts, and many times these essay questions have parts, like part 1, part 2, or maybe even part 3, do them separately. Don't just merge it all. So I can see you're answering part 1 and there you're answering part 2. Okay, so this again will be uploaded onto WhatsApp so you can have it at your disposal whenever you like. It won't be mysterious or missing. And you can reference it when you come to write your essays. So we talked about essays. Now another thing that you have to do is, as you see here, you will have to memorize 12 slokas. Some of you have already done that. And you've done slokas for other classes. And this is also a part of the Bhakti Sastri. And which slokas will you have to memorize? We will show you right here. They are listed.
Is it for just for
What's that?
chapter 1 to 6?
Yeah. Yeah. So you will. These are 12 slokas that are listed in chapters 1 through 6, and you have to memorize these. Now, last year, Glicaria was, the person who heard the ladies, their slokas. And I'm wondering, I'm going to call her and find out whether maybe her husband can be the one that does it for the men, so that that way, when you call them up, you can work it out with them and find out when they have free time. And you can present the slokas. You will be graded on how clearly and well you remember the slokas. If you can just kind of work right through it without making any fumbles, you get a full 10. If you kind of stumble through it but you get through it, then you get some lesser number. So there'll be a grade like that. And before the end of the course, you should do these. So please don't be one of those people who wait till 3 days before the final test to finally do your slokas. By that time you've kind of really lost the ability to keep the whole thing together. It's important to stay up with these different aspects of the Bhakti Sastri course. So you've got slokas, you've got essays, you've got homework, you've got tests, and you've got the classes. So these are all the aspects of the yeah.
What is the do you have any advice on how to best memorize the slokas, and also what about pronunciation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's usually we had a situation where people would work with others to learn how to do the slokas. I'll have to try to figure out how you can work with that. Maybe when I talk to Glicaria, maybe her husband can work with some of the men, or maybe one of you, maybe Bhavatosh or someone like that, could help them to figure out how to say the slokas properly.
Sometimes I confused. I go to the YouTube, then I put the sloka, and I want to listen. How do they pronounce? How do you do that? And that's the way I learn.
Mm-hmm. Where do you listen?
I go to the YouTube, that they have all of them.
Yeah.
But they have thousands of, reciting the verses.
Well, you'll have to tell us how and where on YouTube you find
Yeah,
it.
I will give to you the
Okay.
site. Very nice. That's the way I learn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a second. But careful, you have to hold both of
A
those.
little bit. I can reach.
Can we get this to stretch? But we need we need to do communication. That's the whole point.
On YouTube, you could just put just the shloka number, and it will show up.
What's that?
On YouTube, you just put that shloka number in the search
Really?
box, in the search box, and then it will just give you videos of.
Really?
Any language.
Yeah.
If you want to English.
Cool.
It's not some special channel. You just put like
Right. Bhagavad Gita, BG,
1820.
213,
And you, if you like to know Spanish.
BG 1866, Sarvadharma Parityajya.
If you, whatever, language you want to hear.
Okay, good,
Sure.
good. So we'll talk about that too. Okay, so you're getting a sense of why we're doing this. Now, if you look in your book at the very beginning of your student handbook,
Page number?
yeah, 4, actually page number 5. You will see that we have, in the middle of the page, on page 5, you see knowledge, skills, and values.
Okay.
So knowledge means memory and recall, and they have KNO as an abbreviation for that. And then they have understanding, UND, as an abbreviation. Be sure you bring your books with you every time, by the way. Understanding. And now we have, below knowledge, we have skills, personal application, PEA, and preaching application, PRA. And then we have values, mood and mission, M&M, Vaishnava integrity, VI, culture and ethics, CE, and Vaishnava qualities, VQ. Now, what you'll notice is that these get progressively more abstract as you go down. And, you won't really develop values or culture very much unless you're at least able to remember the basic knowledge and you understand it. So the first step is to be able to remember things. The second step is to be able to understand what you're remembering. And the third thing is where you're able to apply what you're remembering. And then as you do that, you get to where you start to get the mood of devotees, you get the mood of Prabhupada, you get the culture, and you begin to develop actual Vaishnava qualities. Now, it is true that sometimes these things happen anyway, without necessarily going through all this. But for most people, it really doesn't. If you make an effort to understand Krishna consciousness, you'll discover that Krishna consciousness goes much faster and it's much deeper for you. Plus, you will be able to reach out to other people and be convincing to them. Otherwise, you'll just kind of, all over the world we have people who claim to be some religion. They're Hindu or Hare Krishna or Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever it is, So people claim to be some religion, but they don't know much about their religion. If you ask them something, they can give you a few rules and they can't explain why they believe or practice those rules. And so you can hang on that way, but if you can actually get to the level where you can understand Krishna consciousness, remember it, practice it, and then you can explain to somebody why you do what you do, why you say what you say, then it's much more effective. And you will feel much more inspired to do more and to increase your Krishna consciousness. And so that's why we have these courses. As I was saying earlier on today, that, people go into a Bhagavad Gita class or a Bhagavatam class, you kind of pay attention to some of it, you're worried about prasada, maybe you snooze through a little bit of it. Next week somebody else is speaking about something completely different. There's no consistency there, there's no system. You don't work your way through the Bhagavad Gita, but in this particular way, through Bhakti Sastri, we are working our way through the Bhagavad Gita. And we're beginning to realize the Bhagavad Gita isn't a random set of experiences or teachings by Krishna. There's a purpose behind them, and there's a meshwork, and there's a development. It starts at one point and it moves through certain things and winds up somewhere else. So the Mayapur Institute came up with this Bhakti Sastri to make this easy and practical to do, so we can understand why we say what we say, we can understand why Krishna says what he says, and after some time we can begin to understand how this process of Krishna consciousness works. So I realize for some of you, you're new in, others of you have been around for a while, so if you're new in and you even go through this course, I'll be amazed, and I think so don't worry if you have a lot of trouble. I'll try to help you, and you know that for some of you it won't be so much trouble because you've already been around, you've studied, you've gone through some other classes before, so it'll be a little easier. But for others, if you just try to stick with it and you make it through somehow or other, it'll be great, because you'll get a lot more out of this than you will just hearing random, lectures, either on YouTube or on in the classroom. All right, so enough said there. Now, actually, I always forget to put this back to. I forget that you guys are seeing exactly the same thing I'm seeing. Come on. Why is it not moving?
Okay. Maharaj, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, it's also Mataji was asking, the essays, there are different questions. So out of those, do we have to answer one or two?
Two. You
So
can choose any two you want.
We can choose
Any two.
Any two. Right. That's the way it is.
Definitely related with. Is it the essay just for whole course or just for 1 to 6 unit?
1 to 6.
It's just for 1 to 6.
1 to 6.
And then
Right.
we'll
So
have
there'll be another 2 essays
Yes,
for 7 through 12.
And
okay.
the 13 to 18.
13 to 18 will have their
Okay,
own.
I see. So 2 essays and randomly pick whatever is better. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions from about the Bhakti Sastri course?
And one more question then, as Maharaj, you give you a chance. So, closed book question. How many of these we have to answer for 1 to 6?
What's that?
For closed book
First
question.
test 1 to 3 chapter. Second test 4 to 6 Maharaj.
But I'm saying like for the closed book question, do we have closed book question and answer?
But you
Yeah.
have to read all of
Yeah, the closed book questions and answers, those are on,
You have to read all.
those are there in the Purvis Swadhyaya, So you see in Purvis Swadhyaya on 28, 29,
Okay, I see.
you will not be asked all those questions.
There will be a question paper.
But the questions you get asked on the tests that count will be from these
from
persons.
this. So
Right.
already questions are given to us.
Right.
Now we have to get preparation. But
Right.
how many question is going to be in the test? We don't
Yeah,
know yet.
the questions on the test will be, as I recall, something like 7 or 8 in each half test. So there's like 14 or 16 at the very
Okay.
of
Thank
the
you.
total.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And again, the first set of tests will be midway through on the 23rd, which will be a Sunday, of course. And it'll be a closed book test on the 23rd. And you will have something like 7 or 8 questions plus some, what do you call it? Some analogies, right? And when you answer those questions, then I'll grade them and give them back to you. And then at the very end of the course, you'll have another 7 or 8 questions. And as far as the essays go, I would really recommend that you do one of two things when you do your essays. Either A, you do it as a Microsoft Word document and you email it to me, or B, you do it as a Google Doc and you give me the URL for it, either one of those. But I'd prefer not to get a paper mailed to me, or I'd prefer not to get a PDF. I've had so much grief with PDFs that...
So you said Microsoft, what is the first one?
Yeah, Microsoft Word document, or a Google Doc. Google Docs, you can do them online, and instead of actually giving it to me, you can just give me the URL for it, and I can see it that way. So, whichever way suits you. I suppose if you're one of those people who have, I guess Google Documents is free, so you should be able to, you won't have to pay for that. Microsoft does cost buckaroons, you have to pay for it, but...
Microsoft Word is just you write the plain text.
Right.
But you have to have Microsoft in your computer.
With Microsoft Word, I can just download it, and the same thing with Google Docs.
Or you can send by email.
Right, you can send by email. Google Docs, you don't even have to send by email. You just send me the URL.
Not the paper.
Because it's online.
Okay. Regarding the Word doc,
Right.
when we send it, as opposed to not sending in the PDF form, the Word doc, there's a little risk of it being changed because it can be altered, you see. When you send it in PDF,
Yeah, I know.
the original can't be
changed. Right.
Yes.
But at the same time, what I have to do is sometimes I have to seriously reformat, because I've seen people send me stuff that's just unreadable in the current format that it is. So what I do is, my poor little 3-volt brain works a certain way, and I've spent hours before trying to reformat something. And in a PDF, it's like hell, because I have a thing that Matuna recommended for me called Nitro. It's supposed to take PDFs and turn them back into, and it does a terrible job of it for the most part. And sometimes I've had to reformat every paragraph because, it just... because I've seen people where the slokas are all over the place. Every other word is a different size, and those kind of things that look like one of those ransom letters from somebody who's going to murder you, or something like that. That's cut out from different pages. Each word is different size. Each letter is a different font. So some people don't know how to work their way around Word. So that's why with Word, I know that at least after a certain while, I can kind of bash it into a format that I can easily read. Whereas with PDF, it's a lost cause. Okay. Any other questions about the...
Maharaj, I'm asking, I can write it down. I'm the old-fashioned, but then I can print out and everything, follow the all instruction, print out from the computer. I can hand over to you.
Physical.
Physical.
Yeah.
I
used to do that when you were in the fast classes.
Yeah, I've been accepting physical ones, but then, some way or another I have to grade it, and then I have to get it back to you. And
it's okay. No
it's
problem.
Better if it's
Just
actually
send it, okay?
in a digital format.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So, any questiones from our people on Zoom?
The last question, Maharaj, job, and this is a big session going on, I don't know, is really manage the job and this study. Sometimes reality, we got little fall behind. Say, my experience, I did last 3 courses, Nectar of Instruction, Nectar Isopanisad, and Nectar of Devotion. I still couldn't finish Nectar of Devotion test. So that is definitely not good, but that comes reality. So the way you say like 23rd is our test, so we have to be in track to sit on the test. We can't have any like excuse for that. Feel like that.
Well, right. You can. I'm trying to figure out how we can do the tests online. I mean, during COVID, people used to do that all the time because there was no way to check, because, I'm giving you a test and, other than, at least when I give the closed book tests, I expect the paper to be finished in about 30 minutes or 45 minutes, Otherwise, there's a chance that, you could just go to the book and look it all up, So that's, you can take it online, and I'd prefer, unless you have some work schedule that just...
Especially by schedule, I'll come and physically. I'm interested to do the physically in front of you, sitting here. Definitely, it's a learning and practicing in our life. So, if I start, it's slangly if you call it cheating. If I do cheating, I cheat myself.
Right.
So, better I come here, sit down, if it is possible. The COVID time is different.
But, like I say, I don't mind. Some people will have to take it online. There's no
they
way
have
around
to.
it.
So they don't have no other way.
Right,
so
right.
it's fine. So, okay. Thank you.
I had something similar to say that, right now I'm here, so I'm attending and I'll be attending regularly, but once I'm okay and I start Govinda, then Monday evening, sometimes, I'm so tired, I may miss it. So, but for now,
Let me mute myself.
of October, so this is another problem I was thinking about.
Okay, let me see if I can mute myself. I couldn't understand what you were saying. Try it again. Now
I'm online every day, but once I'm okay and I start taking Govindas again, Monday evening, sometimes I may miss by the whole day we work. After that, by 6:30, I have no maybe pay attention or attentively in the course. So, but like I said, we'll see how it goes. This could be a problem. But because Bhagavad Gita is more, not difficult I would say, but something to be more attentive than other three courses what we did. Am I here? Am I audible?
You're unfortunate. Okay, try it again. We're getting a double echo here, and that's why it's hard to understand what you're saying. Say it again. I'm trying to find out how to mute this microphone here so that we only hear one version of you. All right, are you speaking now and I can't hear it at all?
I think Bhakti Prabhu has to stop his system when you speak. Like he has to mute.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram.
Okay, that's it. Say it. Now you're just one version.
Okay, no problem, Maharaj. We can discuss this. I think later it's not something important.
You are very nice now.
Something addition to what
He can't hear you.
Prabhu was saying.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Maharaj?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, no problem, Maharaj. I think we can continue and we'll speak something
Okay.
about this later.
Okay. All right, so
Oh, Maharaj, now this is echoing now. Double.
yeah. Now you hear double of me?
Yes, Maharaj.
You now I don't hear double of you, but you hear double of me. Okay. Do you hear double of me still?
Not really, Maharaj. Still not clear like how it works, but it's okay. I'll manage.
Uh-huh.
Today I'll manage.
Can you hear me now? No, I can't hear you.
Oh, now double echo, Maharaj. Double echo.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, let's ask if there are any final questions about the way that everything gets worked out. By the way, I wanted to mention that your attendance will also be graded. That'll figure into it. Although the attendance is not a big portion of your overall score, so those of you who come on time or are here before the thing starts, you get 10, count them, 10 points. And
including half of the Zoom or something on the way.
Right.
Attending 10.
10.
But
And then if you are 15 minutes late or if you're late, you'll get 9 points. If you're 30 minutes late, you'll get 8 points, and it starts going down from there.
So Maharaj, I'll keep my Zoom exactly 10 o'clock. If I find the parking and then get it in. I'll just say, Maharaj, I'm here. I'm not going to be single minute late.
Don't get in an accident. But
Maharaj, last time I did not come one day. I'm sorry for Govardhan. It was because I was decorating the Govardhan here, and I was late, and you took 5 points from my. Maharaj knew that. Maharaj told in the class, but.
Oh, okay.
But Maharaj is going to give you some point someday. Don't worry.
Okay. So.
It's okay, Maharaj. You are here.
So, what I want to do is to start a little bit now, finally, on the first part of the Bhakti Sastri on Bhagavad Gita, which means that we will take a look at the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter. Today, we will only go over the first chapter. And at the end, or towards the end, we will have a fake test, which you and our audience there on Zoom land will also have a test as well, a fake test. And but for right now, let us take a look at Bhagavad Gita. So we are discussing, and we'll start with this idea that actually I'm going to start off here with a question to all of you. If you were going to sum up the Bhagavad Gita or explain something that's very important in the Bhagavad Gita, what would you say? We'll start off with Bhavatosh.
At first, we say this is the Bhagavad Gita. Everybody hear me? Hare Krishna Prabhuji is online.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Oh, you hear me?
Very good. Very good.
Hare Krishna. So if I speak about Bhagavad Gita at first, I will summarize how the Bhagavad Gita came to us. Lord Sri Krishna, he spoke to Arjuna in a battlefield, Kurukshetra, and it is not regular battlefield. It's a spiritual meaning also, and also from that battle we learn about our life, philosophy, science, and everything is in there. and that is the Bhagavad Gita is on our hand today, which is actually not spoken this time. If you go back to the history, first Lord Sri Krishna spoke into the king of the Sun King, Vibhushan. So it was going down, but some point of the time, it's almost lost. And then again, 5,000 years before, this Bhagavad Gita came to us. And this is basically, I will give the minimum summary of the Bhagavad Gita.
So you're saying that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken originally by the sun god and
To the sun god.
to the sun god, right, by Krishna.
In the beginning, long before. And then 5,000 years before, again, Krishna spoke into
Right.
Arjuna in the battlefield.
Okay, so that's one quick slice of Bhagavad Gita. Let's ask somebody online. Maybe Yarun can tell us what he would say about Bhagavad Gita. Let me get it so that I don't mess up with the double sound. Okay, Yarun, you should be able to.
Yes, Hare Krishna Maharaj. When I distribute the Bhagavad Gita on the street also, so what I mostly say to people is I say, this is like when you go to New York or any big city and you don't know your way around, you look on Google Maps. So I say Bhagavad Gita is like your Google Maps for life. So you can know what direction you need to take.
Okay. What would you say? I'm sorry, probably you can't hear me.
No, I hear you, Maharaj.
You do?
Okay.
Yeah, I hear you, Maharaj.
You can hear me?
Yeah, very good.
So that's the correction.
Really?
That's great, man.
Oh, then I'm not worried. Can you hear Baba Tosh?
Don't be worried.
I don't have.
Say something.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, do you hear me?
I heard everybody.
Okay, good.
That's the correction.
Okay, so this is the way to do it. Somehow we've hit on the right adjustment. So I can hear you, you can hear me. We don't hear double, or do you hear a double of me?
No, everything's clear.
Oh, good. So, wow, Krishna finally arranged it.
Take the picture of this setup.
Well, the setup's in here.
Or you can take a screenshot for that page. So next time,
Right.
Take time, you just go through that setup. So.
Maharaj, especially after you have changed the microphone, everything is very clear.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So, Bhaktivatsal, how would you summarize the Bhagavad Gita in, or what stands out to the Bhagavad Gita about you, as far as either the way it happened, what it says, or what happens in it?
So, Maharaj, just one thing, when you say summarize means like, what is the conclusion?
Well,
Learned, or
not really just the conclusion, but what stands out. If you were going to, somebody said to you, well, why is Bhagavad Gita important? What would you say? I guess that's the best way to phrase it.
Maharaj, right now I'm struggling with modes, so maybe I'll speak on that. What are modes? How we can come out of it? How we are struggling with modes? That's what I've learned from Bhagavad Gita in detail, and this is something which is because of which we are disturbed sometimes and we are in anxiety. So if we read this would help us a lot.
Okay. David Damodar, can you pass the mic down that way?
So Bhagavad Gita for me is just like an essential, like Prabhupada call it, an ABC of spiritual knowledge. Is an ABC of spiritual knowledge is what kind of like made. I studied different. I read Christian scriptures and I studied Buddhism, but Bhagavad Gita made more sense to me because it's the most comprehensive way, because Krishna is explaining all the different types of yoga, and before he asks Arjuna to Sarvadharma Paritaja, to surrender, he basically explains how everything is moving and working in the universe and beyond. So then, like for me, Bhagavad Gita, it is what it is. It's just like a cornerstone of the spiritual path.
Okay. How about Jai Radhe, if she can tell us?
Mataji has to unmute. We don't hear you, Mataji.
Yeah.
Jai Radhe, Mataji.
Are we not getting sound through there? Jai Radhe, are you there? All right, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but let's ask Pushpanjali.
Okay.
Use a little goodie there.
Well, I would say that the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 1, or just overall? Chapter 1.
Anyway, the whole Bhagavad Gita. I mean,
whole
what stands out in the Bhagavad Gita to you?
Okay, what I would say that stands out for myself is about how Arjuna is so distraught with having to kill his relatives and people that he knows, his friends, that for us, through this conversation with Krishna, talking to Arjuna, Arjuna talking to Krishna, that really, like Krishna says, they're already dead. Just do your duty. His duty was as a warrior. So what I've gotten out of all of this is that whatever we do, if we do our duty, but we don't do it for fruitive and looking for anything in return, and just do it for Krishna, for God, it can't go wrong. Arjuna was concerned about committing sin. He didn't want to kill these people he knew, and then he was asking, how can he, gain the kingdom and having killed these people? It's like it just didn't sit well with him to do this. So I've gotten out of that. Overall, it's about doing, not for serving God, serving Krishna, and not ourselves. And it'll be okay. We won't be creating karma, good or bad, when we do it for Krishna.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Arjuna.
Who is Arjuna?
What's that?
He is Arjuna.
Yeah.
So he will say whatever he heard. Definitely sure. Nobody can say anything. He's like, he's Hare Krishna. Whatever you heard from Krishna.
So what I get from the Bhagavad Gita in summary, is that life is full of calamity, and it's full of misery, and that in order to transcend this, which is a natural part of life, the misery and the calamities, in order to transcend, we must devote ourselves to Krishna so that we could be liberated from it. That's what I get from it.
Okay. That's kind of let's hear from Gokuleshwari.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I always say to my daughter and my patient when they ask something, I always say that the only one verses I always remember, the Sri Krishna said that in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharmang parityajya mamakang sharanang bhaja, ahang tang sarpa papabha mukhesh mahashucha. And I tell my daughter, look, how Krishna said himself to us, leave everything, come to me. I will save you from all sin and everything. And whatever you do, just do for me. I will take you with me. So that is I think Bhagavad Gita, it is our soul. We learn from Bhagavad Gita, body and soul is not the same, it's different from the body, and this is the gist we learn from Bhagavad Gita. If we learn, we have to understand everything, what is the body and soul, what is the difference, and what we have to do for them. Like we can serve him like Shravanam, Kirtanam, Padasana, 9 way. Anyway, Krishna said, just come to me, do for me everything. Even though you don't have to leave the karma, you do your karma too, but do it for me. That's it. That's I say like yesterday I had one patient, he's a Buddhist monk. He came to my country and he asked me a lot of questions. Then I said that I'm from ISKCON, I'm vegetarian, everything. Then he's very nice. He was eating something, drinking tea. Then he called me in the evening. He said, sister, I want a vegetarian rice. I don't want to drink tea, anything, because I was talking to him. His influence so quick. Give me the milk. But my opinion is our main goal, like Prabhupada said that, we have to inspire, we have to influence and, motivate people. How can, they attract to our Bhagavad Gita, attract to the ISKCON devotees? What we learn and what we have to distribute. And he said, and he told me, I'm very lucky I found you today. And he was chanting, we had a lot of problem in Bangladesh, and I communicate with the government, everything to save the ISKCON because I like their policy. He's a monk too. But my opinion is, we don't have to read the Bhagavad Gita, we don't have to understand, but we have to distribute our knowledge and everything to other people, to them they can influence. They can, they can motivate, and they can talk about that. That's why I think that Bhagavad Gita, it is our gist, our soul, what we learn. Krishna say himself, come to me, I save you from all sin, everything, I take you with me. So what else we need? That's it.
Okay. Okay. So, what I want to do now is here, we'll start with one overview of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is one thing that I want you all to remember, is the Bhagavad Gita is broken into 3 sections. Some of you already know this. The first 6 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the middle 6 chapters, and the third 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Hey, the Bhakti Sastri courses worked out exactly the same way. Look at that. Who would have thunk it, So it's Bhakti Sastri Unit 1, Bhakti Sastri Unit 2, Bhakti Sastri Unit 3. So we have the first third of Bhagavad Gita, the second third of Bhagavad Gita, and the third third of Bhagavad Gita. We are on the first third Bhagavad Gita, which means chapters 1 through 6. What happens in chapters 1 through 6? Well, one of the things that happens is we learn how karma leads to bhakti. That's the way it's described. What that means is that Arjuna is saying, I will not fight. In other words, he will not act. But actually, Krishna is telling him, no, you should act, but not for your reasons, for my reasons. You should act not because it makes you happy or makes you sad, but because you're acting for the Supreme. So that's how karma leads to bhakti. In other words, karma here means how action leads to bhakti, how you can act but still be doing bhakti. And then, of course, in the middle third, we aren't going to be talking about that in this unit. That'll be somewhere down the road. But in the second third, we'll hear directly about bhakti. From chapter 7 through chapter 12, we will hear directly about bhakti. And then in the third, we'll learn about how jnana leads to bhakti. So in the third, we learn about various Vedic things and how those Vedic things are useful in the process of bhakti. What we're going to learn is that the Vedic system is quite elaborate. There's lots of layers and levels, but many levels and layers are similar, kind of like this building, you know. We have the first floor, we have the second floor, and you know, we have the third floor and the fourth floor. The ladies' floor and the men's floor looks pretty much the same. The layout is more or less the same, but it's really different from the ground floor, you know. So there's some similarities and some differences. And here in the basement, the layout looks really different than it does on the first floor or on the fourth floor, you know. So the layout's very different. But in some places, there's a lot of similarity. In some places, there's a lot of differences. So in this third of Bhagavad Gita, we are going to hear about how, you know, more about the modes of nature. We're going to learn about the doer. We're going to learn about the factors of action. We're going to learn about, particularly the modes of nature, what knowledge is in the modes of nature, what determination is in the modes of nature, what religion is in the mode of nature, what happiness is in the mode of nature. We're going to learn those kind of things. They're more, you know, kind of esoteric knowledge, but it helps us support bhakti. So these are the three big sections of bhakti. And the Bhakti Sastri lines up exactly with these because we have three sections of Bhakti Sastri, and even if there weren't three sections of Bhakti Sastri, the Bhagavad Gita is divided into three sections anyways. It has nothing to do with Bhakti Sastri, but it was originally divided into three sections. So I wanted to move on here to the next item. So, if you look in your books on page 18.
18?
Yep. We have the sections of chapter 1. When I first started to try to understand the Bhagavad Gita, I have to confess that I didn't understand how the Bhagavad Gita worked. It seemed to me kind of random, the way that things were laid out in the Bhagavad Gita. And I was really kind of afraid that I would always find it kind of random, sort of like the same experience I got when I read the Bible or some other things like that, where there seemed to be kind of a theme, but not really, you know. However, after I read the Bhagavad Gita for a few years, I began to realize there is a flow to the Bhagavad Gita. And I started to write down what I thought were the clumps, where things were, Krishna and Arjuna were kind of talking about the same thing, and then when they kind of moved on to something else. And then after I had done that for about 2 or 3 years, then I found out that Burijan had already done it, you know, and I thought, well, somebody's already done it, so let me check it out. And then I got that book and I began to look at it, and I began to see how we came up with similar things in some places, and in other places we were very different, you know, the way we, and I think that you could slice the cake, you know, in different ways, you know, with, you know, pieces that look like wedges, or slice it this way where they're all circles, but, you know, you can slice the cake in sometimes different ways. But just be aware that it helps a lot to kind of understand that, like in any conversation, it has a beginning and then kind of a middle part, and it finally wraps up at a certain point. So in the same way, the Bhagavad Gita starts, with a certain thing, and it moves through certain sessions, and then we can kind of see how that runs. So here is the way in Bhakti Sastri that they break it down. The last time I gave this class, I did it the way I did it. But this time I decided, well, let's do it the way the Bhakti Sastri class does it. But then I saw later on the Bhakti Sastri class does it a different way, even in the same book. So, I mean, so anyway, this is it. So we have the first verse, Dharma Kshetre, which is verse 1.1. And this verse is by itself. And one says it is kind of by itself. This verse is Dharma Kshetre, Kuru Kshetre, Samaveda, Yuyutsava. So, the verse actually is talking about the idea of why Dhritarashtra is worried about the Battle of Kurukshetra, And what's interesting is this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita is a lot like the Mahabharata.
Yes.
Have any of you read the Mahabharata? Raise your hand if you've read the Mahabharata, or at least read parts of it.
My mama used to read, she used to like, I used to listen. Oh, sorry. Maharaj, my mom used to read the Bhagavad Gita. She was a Krishna devotee. And when she used to read the Mahabharata, very loudly, I used to listen. Very nice, Maharaj. My mom used to read Mahabharata and Ramayana. So she used to read very loudly, I always listen.
So, that was kind of tradition in our Bengal. A lot of places, some people in home even, they used to read in their home, and other family member used to sit down next to it. So that was our traditional. But one good things happened. Recent years, there's some movie created by some of the movie producers in India. There are 2 or 3 different type of movie already there with the episodes. So that makes a lot of people understanding, at least listening about what is Mahabharatam this way, not going through reading books or anything.
Right.
So if you say, we read Mahabharatam.
So the Mahabharata is a long story. Right. And in the short of it, I have to keep watching because it looks like it's telling me I've logged out of my internet account. I don't know why it's telling me that, but I don't know. Are these people frozen or are no? Your end just looked up, so he must not be frozen. We're still connected. Your end, I'm connected, right?
Can I use?
Yes.
I need to use. Can I?
Yeah. So you're there. Okay. So it looks like I'm offline, but evidently I'm still connected, so I must be online. So I don't know what it's giving me some kind of strange signal. I don't know why, but at any rate, we'll continue until we actually disconnect. So the Mahabharata is a very long story, and it's a story of a group of kings. In other words, royal families. We start off with one royal family, then the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. So we have a story about, Maharaj Shantanu, and then from there we finally get to the point where we have Dhritarashtra, and we have Pandu, and then we have Vidura. So these were 3 sons born of Satyavati, and actually they were born from Satya. That's his phone. He's not here. Satyavati, and we had. Well, she arranged it, and we have the Veda Vyas having or becoming the father of. I'm hoping that'll finish because he's out of the room right now, so he can't. We have Veda Vyas, who, because the 3 queens of Kashi, one of them left, Amba left, Ambika and Ambalika remained behind, and first Chitrangada was killed, and then he was a son of Satyavati, and then we had Vichitravirya died from tuberculosis, so he had 2 queens and neither of them had any children. And then after we discovered that neither had children, then Satyavati asked for Vedavyas to come and beget children. So Vedavyas begot 1 child from Ambika and 1 child from Ambalika. And one of those children was blind because Dhritarashtra, because that child, when Vedavyas came together with his mother, she closed her eyes. So that child was born blind, and then the next child was born white because that queen was very terrified by the way. Vedavyas lives in the forest, and he's a gnarly-looking yogi. And these were queens, they were under their mother-in-law said, Satyavati, that one of the members of the family will come to give children. So they thought, well, it must be a royal, like king or something like that. They didn't expect Vedavyas. And Vedavyas was this gnarly-looking, yogi with dreadlocks and the whole bit. And so they were terrified. Both of them were terrified. One of them closed their eyes. And so Dhritarashtra was born blind. And the other one turned white out of fear. So Pandu was born very white in complexion.
But he was very weak, Mother.
But right. At any rate, there was a third opportunity to have a child, but by this point, neither of the queen wanted to go through the experience with Vedavyas again. So they sent one of their maidservants. And the maidservant came to Vedavyas, and Vedavyas had a child by the maidservant. So the maidservant wasn't really a queen, so the child wasn't royalty. But the child was very virtuous because the maidservant was very pious. And so this was Vidura, and this is where we get the 3 brothers. We get Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura.
Maharaj, in this point, I have a question to you. So they are actually children of 3 different fathers?
What's that?
Vedavyas.
Same
and who is the
father.
mother?
Well, there were 3 queens of Kashi. One of them is Amba, one of them is Ambalika, and the other is Ambika. Okay. So Amba wanted to marry Shalva. And, she came to, because it was Bhishmadev who kidnapped the queens from Kashi. He had taken a vow he would never get married. So everybody was surprised when he kidnapped queens. They thought, what's this guy doing? He told us he wasn't going to get married, and here he's kidnapping 3 queens. He was kidnapping them for the kings, for particularly Vichitravirya, because Vichitravirya was young, and, they were afraid that, something might happen, So he got them for Vichitravirya. And one of them, Amba, said, my dear Bhishma, we had pledged to get married, Shalva and myself, and since you've got my two sisters, why do you need me? And, Bhishma said, well, if you really want to go to Shalva, fine, So she took off to go reunite with Shalva, to get married with Shalva, but Shalva rejected her. So then she became angry, and she came back and said, now you have to marry me. He said, I had never intended to marry. And then that turns into a whole thing. But, so that was Amba. Now, Ambika and Ambalika did get married to Vichitravirya, although he was very young. But Vichitravirya died in a young age. So they never got to have children by him. And that's when Vyasadeva came. And Vyasadeva, because he's also in the family, Satyavati, before she married Pandu, before she married, what's his name? Shantanu, I think it was.
Shantanu, you said Shantanu.
Yeah, so before she married Shantanu, she was rowing people across a river, and one of those people was Parashara Muni. And Parashara Muni said this is the perfect time to bring the incarnation of the Vedic literatures. So he told that to Satyavati. She said, but I'm a young girl, we're not married, and all the usual stuff. And he said, don't worry, you will retain your virginity, and but this is necessary so that we can get an incarnation of the Supreme who will write the Vedic literatures. And she said, but we're in the middle of a river. And he said, that's all right. And he created a fog. And so then Vyasadeva was born. So immediately after they had sex, immediately Vyasadeva was born. It wasn't like later on. It happened right away. And Vyasadeva wasn't born a child. He was born already, mostly mature. And he said, my dear mother, if you ever need me, then call me and I'll come back to you. And then she regained her virginity, and then nobody ever knew that she ever had this child, Vyasadeva. So her two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, were dead. But now, how to have the line go on? So she said, why don't we bring Vedavyas, And that was what Bhishma Dev heard from her. And Bhishma Dev agreed with the idea. So Vedavyas came in. With Vedavyas and Ambalika and Ambika, then we got Pandu and...
Maharaj, I don't know, because I read it. Satyavati's previous name was Moshagandha.
What's that?
Moshagandha. She always smelled like a fish.
Right.
So nobody wanted to marry her.
Right.
Then her father wanted, she always cry, and her father told her, in the morning, like Brahma Muhurta, lot of sannyasi, lot of graces, they come to take the bath in the Ganga. And you go there, you will find one day some sannyasi or sages, and you can ask them to marry you. Then she always used to go there. One day, Parashar Muni.
Well, let's not get too carried off in the Mahabharata.
No, I just said it then. They
right.
did that. But her previous name was Satyavati, previous name was Moshagandha.
Right. Well, there's a reason why she smelled like a fish.
Smell.
She and her brother were originally born in a fish.
Yeah, fisherman, father.
Well, the father was a fisherman.
Fisherman, yes.
But there's a whole story about how a eagle or a hawk was bringing semina to the wife of a king he was in the forest, and on the way, as the hawk was flying to give the semen to the king's wife, another hawk attacked, and they fought over it because the other hawk thought he had some meat. And the semen dropped into the water, and a fish ate it, and then the fish gave birth to 2 human children. And so, at any rate, that's a long story. So you can see how involved this whole Mahabharata story is. But the point that I wanted to make was that now we have, Dhritarashtra, we have Pandu, and we have Vidura. So Vidura is not royalty. Pandu is royalty. Dhritarashtra can't rule because he's blind. So a king that's blind can't be a warrior. So, but what happens is that both Gandhari, who is the wife of Dhritarashtra, and Kunti is the wife of Pandu. They're both pregnant at the same time. Now, Kunti couldn't have children by Pandu because Pandu had been cursed. So Pandu couldn't have children the usual way. Why was he cursed? Because he happened to shoot a young boy. Actually, no, he shot a couple, a sage and his wife, I think, who were having sex in the forest as animals. They had taken the form of deer or something like that. And, Pandu shot them, and they cursed him that when he approached his wife, he would die too. So he couldn't have children. However, they figured that since Kunti, when she was a young girl, was given the benediction that she could call any demigod. So she first called, what's that? Yeah, she first called Suryadev. But that was before she was married to Pandu. And then Karna was born, and she didn't know what to do with Karna. So she put Karna in a basket and put him in the water. Later he was found by Adi Rat and his wife. And so he grew up, but he never knew who his mother was, at least until much later. Then, now that she's married to Pandu, she says, well, I can do the same thing. And so she calls, first of all, the god of Dharma, so Dharmaraj gives her the child which we will call Yudhishthira. And then the next child is the god of the wind, who gives her the child we know as Bhima Sen. Right. Then the next child is the god of the rains and the chief of the demigods, which is Indra. And there we have Arjun, right? And then Madri asks, well, Kunti, can you teach me how to do this? I'd kind of like to have children too, even if it's by demigods. And so she calls the twin Ashvini demigods, and they give him Nakala and Sahadev.
Is it there by Kunti or by
Madri? Another mother.
Nakul and Sahadev is not Kunti's children.
No,
They are not Kunti.
no, they're Madri's children.
Yeah, they had
She was another wife of Pandu, right? But neither of them had children by Pandu. Of course, later Pandu tries to approach Madri, and as a result, he dies. And that's when the Pandavas are a little older. So at any rate, you can see how this story goes. Now, since both Gandhari and Kunti are pregnant at the same time, they're thinking whoever gives birth first will have the king, because it was primogeniture. The king is the firstborn. So it was kind of a baby race, and it winds up that Kunti wins, with Yudhishthira being born. And then, this frustrates Gandhari. And she was thinking that, why am I not giving birth? And she struck her womb, and this big blob of flesh came out. And Vyasadeva takes the big blob of flesh and pinches it into little pieces and puts it into pots with ghee in them. And he puts it into 100 pots, and each one grows into a son. This was like the first, like cloning episode, and each one of them became the 100 brothers of Duryodhan. So Duryodhan had 99 brothers. There were 100 altogether. And so this is Duryodhan and his brothers. Now Duryodhan always wanted to be the actual king. The Pandavas, however, because they had grown up with their father Pandu didn't like to stay in the castle or the palace at Hastinapur. He liked to be wandering around in the kingdom and doing things, Particularly he liked to be in the forest talking to the sages, because he was really keen on doing that. So the Pandavas grew up in the forest. And the Kurus, the sons of Gandhari and Dhritarashtra, they grew up in Hastinapur. So they were where the palace was, and so they naturally rigged things so they became the king. Duryodhana became the king. Finally, when the Pandavas came back, Duryodhana was already running things, even though technically they were the heir apparent, So this finally leads to the gambling match, and finally leads to where, as a result of the gambling match, Draupadi is insulted, the Pandavas are exiled for 13 years, and then after 13 years they come back and demand not to own the whole kingdom, but to have the part of the kingdom that they once did have. They had a smaller part of the kingdom at one point. So Duryodhana flatly refused, and then we have the Battle of Kurukshetra.
In the meantime, I had one question a little back. So it's all the children baggaged by different demigods by Kunti. So it was the time when this type of baggaging the children was allowed.
Yeah.
But is it not allowed in this time, in Kali Yuga?
Well, it's not allowed, but I think the demigods aren't much in favor of it.
Okay, because of our Kali.
Right. As what happens in Kali Yuga, humans become fairly degraded. It's like this is a bad neighborhood now. The demigods don't like to drive through the earth.
Before people used to see demigods,
right?
They used to talk even face to face.
Demigods used to come here and they were invited to sacrifices and festivals and things like that. But because the earth has become very degraded, the demigods don't come here anymore. And
also, one additional question. One day I read from some, I forget, Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, like one brother did not have child, so another brother bagged a child from his brother's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually asked the question in our channel, I think Namhata channel or Sheva channel. Then I got the answer from somebody. It was before happened. In Kali Yuga it is prohibited.
Right. Actually, there's a stricture that one shouldn't do that. Lord Chaitanya mentions that in the Caitanya Caritamrta, that there are several things that are forbidden in the age of Kali Yuga. One is having children in your brother's wife, and another one is taking sannyas. But they mean Mayavad sannyas. So at any rate, there's several things like that. At any rate, I don't want to get too far afield here because we want to stay on target. So this is our sections here. So this first chapter of Bhagavad Gita sort of comes out of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is this long story. There is philosophy in the Mahabharata, but the philosophy is mostly stories. And in the telling of the stories, you learn some moral, or you learn some, good behavior of certain sages or kings or warriors or whatever it is, And also you learn people who did things wrong, So this is how the Mahabharata is. And Vedavyas wrote it that way because philosophy is usually easier to grasp in the form of a story. But then suddenly you hit the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is one chapter of the Mahabharata where we don't hear a story anymore. It just, after the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it stops, and then we hear philosophy for the rest of the other 18 chapters, So we have one chapter of kind of a narrative where we actually see Arjuna on the battlefield, we see Krishna, we hear about Duryodhana, we hear about Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. And then now, after you get to the end of the first chapter, we just start talking philosophy. That's what Krishna does. Arjuna says, I'm not going to fight, and we talk about philosophy. And that goes all the way through until the end of Bhagavad Gita. And then, Arjuna says, I will fight, et cetera, et cetera. And then we go on into the battle. Right after Bhagavad Gita, we start the 18 days of the fight of the Kurukshetra war, So here is So any questions about that? That's how Bhagavad Gita interfaces into the Mahabharata. Mahabharata's like this huge epic, and Bhagavad Gita is one chapter. But the important thing is the Bhagavad Gita is an important chapter of the Mahabharata, right? It's sometimes described as like the diamond on a ring, you know. The rest of it's nice looking, but it's the diamond that makes it actually valuable. And it's the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna actually explains the story. So in the story, we learn the philosophy behind, you know, what Krishna really wants. And that's what makes the Bhagavad Gita different than the rest of the Srimad Mahabharata, you know. So the Mahabharata has all these stories, but Bhagavad Gita has the philosophy that makes the Mahabharata actually worth listening to. Because there are many stories in the Mahabharata that aren't particularly devotional, you know. There's stories about kings who did pious things and went to heaven. There's stories about how important it is to have a family. There's stories about, you know, all these kind of things that really are not devotion. But in the Bhagavad Gita, when we get to that part of the Mahabharata, that's where now we're talking about devotional service and nothing else. And Krishna explains it to Arjuna. So we start off with this Dharma Kshetra. Then we have Duryodhana's diplomacy from 1-3.
3 to 13.
Yeah. Actually, it's supposed to be 1-1. I thought I changed it, but I must have changed back. They made a mistake. It's
here I see 1 is question, and the 1.1 is question. Same 1.2 is the answers. Maybe that's why you just put it in there, and
but
2 is not there.
This should be 2. And this should be 2 instead of 3. I saw this yesterday, and I thought I changed it, but I must not have changed it in this one. Because
Mine looks like this right here.
what's that?
This one looks like this the one I have.
Oh, you have the older version.
Oh, yes,
Yeah. You have the version that I had 2 days ago, before I changed it all. That was the version I used last year. So at any rate, it should be 2 to 13. So we have Dharma Kshetra, and then we have Duryodhana's diplomacy. Then we have signs for a victory of the Pandavas. We're going to talk about this, that there are a number of signals that Prabhupada mentions that will foretell the fact that the Pandavas are going to win and the Kauravas are going to lose. We don't know that at this moment, but we're going to see signs that make that kind of, apparent. And then we have Krishna as Bhakta Vatsala. So we have, this is the point where Arjuna wants to see the chariot on the middle of the two armies so he can see who's going to fight. And then he says, I don't want to fight. And then these are his doubts, and that continues to the end of section 5 of chapter 1, with 28 to 46. And then we get into chapter 2. So this is kind of the flow. We have Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya talking. Then we have Duryodhana talking to his army. He looks at the Pandava side first. And he says, oh, look at these people on the Pandava side. They're powerful, but they're not as powerful as our guys, So these are, powerful people, but we've got more powerful people. We've got Bhishma Dev, so we're going to win. This is, Duryodhana's thinking. And then he says, well, here's who's on our side. Then he gives a list of his side. Especially he talks about grandfather Bhishma. But he says, you all better be careful so that the enemy doesn't take advantage of grandfather Bhishma because he's kind of old now. So when he says that, then we find, whoop, everybody blows the conch shells. And so grandfather Bhishma blows the conch shells. And then after the Kurus blow their conch shells, then the Pandavas blow their conch shells. And in the Bhagavad Gita it says that the Pandavas' conch shells were transcendental, and they shattered the hearts of the Kauravas. So that was one of the reasons why we find out the signs for the failure of the Kauravas and the success of the Pandavas. So that's one of the signs. There's other signs too. But then after that, after the conch shells blow, then we have Arjuna asking Krishna to wheel the chariot between the two armies. Arjuna has that done by Krishna, and Krishna says, "Behold those who are going to fight." And after saying that, then Arjuna sees Drona and Bhishma, and he starts to get cold feet, because he says, how can I shoot arrows at these people? They're my teachers and my superiors. Bhishma practically brought me up like a father, and now I'm supposed to fight him and kill him. And Drona was my teacher, this is not right. And then he gives his various reasons for not wanting to fight. And this starts off in chapter 5, but he gives more reasons in chapter 2. So it kind of spills over into chapter 2. Any questions about the overview of chapter 1?
Yeah, it really. In the beginning you said we read Bhagavad Gita, but we didn't have actually what it is. We just keep reading. The sequence is there, and there is a lot of theme in their chapter or few verses together. You can bundle up how you did, make it a 5 group. So that gives like nice overview for first chapter.
Right.
And it is actually we knew, but we did not envision like that. So this is a nice envision.
Right.
Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Bhaktavatsala? I heard it come. I heard the echo chamber again. You're okay?
No, next one. Yeah, this was so good. Yeah, now you can say.
Say it again.
Maharaj, I said all good, Maharaj.
Okay, good.
Very attentively, whatever you explained.
Okay, good. Okay, so now we're going to the next item here. This is another view of the flow. We have Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. They're talking. Duryodhana assesses the Pandavas. Duryodhana assesses the Kauravas. Conch shells bone. Krishna drives a chariot between the armies. Arjuna has doubts. This is basically the same thing, but this is more not set up in which sloka is which, but kind of just an easy way to understand the flow. Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra, they're talking. Duryodhana begins to say what he thinks about the Pandavas, and he says what he thinks about his own army. Then the conch shells are blown. Krishna drives a chariot between the armies, and Arjuna's doubts. Okay, so that's the next item. Now, this is what Dhritarashtra fears. Now, I'm going through these things. These are going to be questions on your test. So don't space out. His sons would lose. This is what he was afraid of, that his sons would lose. This is him and Sanjaya speaking. That his sons would compromise. He didn't want them to make some deal with the Pandavas. He wanted them to fight, but he wanted them to win. And then he knew that Krishna was on the Pandava side. So that was something that also bothered him. Now, the final thing is what this verse is about, that the battle was taking place on Kurukshetra or Dharmakshetra. So Kurukshetra or Dharmakshetra means the place of religion. So he knew that his sons were not that religious, and he knew the Pandavas were very religious. So he thought, well, the Pandavas are probably going to get some special stars and points for being at Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, but my sons are not going to get any points. They'll get, the Razzie cushion or something like that. They'll get some, they won't get any good merits for being there. So this was Dhritarashtra's fear. And you'll notice these are dealing directly with your questions that you're going to see in your Purva Swadhyaya on, where.
First question. First question.
Yeah, where's the Purva Swadhyaya? What page is it? Yeah, it's on 28.
First question.
Yeah. And now here is some words that we see coming out of the verses here. In the early parts of the verse where Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra are speaking, Sanjaya says, Mamaka, which Mamaka means my party or my sons. And then later on, Duryodhana uses the word Tava Shishyena Dhimata, which means your intelligent disciple. So Tava is your, Shishyena is disciple, and Dhimata means very intelligent. So who is he saying that to? He's saying that to Dronacharya. Why? Because Dronacharya trained up Drishtadyumna. And Drishtadyumna, we all know, has been given he was actually born with the specific purpose of killing Bhishmadev. Why was he born with the specific purpose of killing Bhishmadev? Well, that's the whole story. But he was born with the specific purpose of killing Bhishmadev. So Drishtadyumna, he came to get taught how to fight by who? You guessed it, he came to get taught by Bhishmadev. So Bhishmadev knew that Drishtadyumna was born to kill him, and he knew that he wanted to learn how to fight. Why? So he could fight him. And he taught him anyway, because that's the way Kshatriyas are, So this is what, Duryodhana is pointing out, sure that was a good idea, teaching? Because now he's going to use your teaching to kill you. So this was, your intelligent disciple, Tava Shishyena Dhimata. And then Gudakesh, we have conquer of sleep. So that is Gudakesh means conqueror of the gunas. Guda is. So who is conqueror of sleep? Does anybody know?
Arjuna.
Yep, Arjuna is the conqueror of sleep. So why is he called the conqueror of sleep?
His knowledge, wake up.
Yarun, I think, is going to tell us, or somebody's there.
I think because he finally sees what is the truth, what he should do.
No.
Maharaj, I think he got this name because he was practicing archery at night also.
Right. Well.
And that's how he conquered his sleep.
Well, that's there too. But he stayed awake, during most of the Battle of Kurukshetra. He didn't sleep for all that time because he was constantly thinking about it. So he was called Gudakesh.
How about that, Maharaj? Like after listening all everything from Krishna, what is his
Ignorance is all everything gone.
Yeah.
And he became so conscious the way he wake up from sleep.
Right. Well, that's there too. But usually Gudakesh refers to the fact that Arjuna actually didn't sleep for much of the Battle of Kurukshetra. Yeah, Pushpanjali.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the picture that you just had on. Thank you. The picture.
Yeah, this one?
Who is who?
Yeah, this is the same picture as before, it's just by a different artist. This is Dhritarashtra, and that's Sanjaya. Sanjaya is the servant of Dhritarashtra, but he's also...
Disciple of
secretary?
What's that?
He's secretary of Dhritarashtra?
Right.
Also is the disciple of Vyasadeva.
Right. But Sanjaya is a disciple of Vyasadeva. Now, what Vyasadeva wanted to do was to give Dhritarashtra mystic vision. Now, listen to what I'm saying. He wanted to give Dhritarashtra mystic vision so that not only, Dhritarashtra had been blind from birth. So he was going to give him the vision not only to see regularly, but he could see what was going on far away. In other words, in the Battle of Kurukshetra. They were sitting in Hastinapur. So Kurukshetra was a long ways away. So Vyasadeva wanted to give that to Dhritarashtra, but Dhritarashtra said no. Because he knew that if he saw, he would probably see his sons all be slaughtered. So he turned down the opportunity to not only see regularly, but to see far away. And so Vyasadeva gave it to Sanjaya instead. So that's what happened. So, yeah, give him the...
In the picture right there, what is in Sanjaya's heart? What is that?
Yeah. See, that's the point. Sanjaya has mystic vision. He's able, like television, to see what's going on in the Battle of Kurukshetra, which is far away from where they are. But he can see it happening, even though he's far away. And he's describing blow by blow what's happening to Dhritarashtra. And so that's what's taking place there. Now, this previous picture is the same picture, but by a different artist. So this is that same picture. There again is Sanjaya, and there again is Dhritarashtra, but it's just a different artist.
One could say that this is clairvoyance.
Wait. Because if you don't
could one say that that's equivalent to clairvoyance?
Yeah, something like clairvoyance. Okay, so now we have this whole thing happening. Another question that's in these Purva Swadhyaya is about Burijan's book. I should mention that. Here is Bink F. Burijan's book. I'll turn it around both ways. That's so you can see it. And this is so our friends on the, I have to turn that around too. Oh, come on. So this is the Surrender Unto Me by Burijan. It actually mentions that you should get this book, our Bhakti Sastri, because they've taken a lot of things from it. So this is Surrender Unto Me. But in this book, Surrender Unto Me, we have this story that Burijan tells about how in the Mahabharata, when the gambling match happened with Draupadi, of course, we see that one after another, the Pandavas lost everything they had. What had happened was when the Pandavas came back from the forest, we mentioned a little while ago that the Pandavas grew up in the forest. They didn't grow up in the palace. Whereas Duryodhana and his brothers, the sons of Dhritarashtra, they did grow up in the palace. So they knew their way around. They had connections. Pandavas had no connections. But they came back, and people were saying, but these are the actual heir apparent. They should have something. And so Dhritarashtra thought about it, and he thought, there's kind of a desert area out there, kind of in one place. Hey, you want it, Pandavas? Go for it. So he gave Pandavas kind of a crummy area. But they went out there, and with Krishna and the help of the Pandavas, in a short time, the Pandavas had turned it all around and made it a wonderful place. And it started to be more important and more powerful than even Hastinapur was. So it started to grow into a big deal, And then this made Duryodhana super envious. And so what did Duryodhana do? He thought about, how do I get this away from the Pandavas? So,
Khandabon.
What's that?
The area called Khandabon.
Well, yeah, it's also sometimes known as, what's the other one? I can't, something like Khandaban, but it's a little bit.
Khandaprastha.
Was that?
Khandaprastha Maharaj.
Khandavaprastha, that's what I'm trying to say.
Khandaprastha.
Khandavaprastha, that's what I was trying to think of. So there was Indraprastha and Khandavaprastha. So there's a whole story there too. But what took place then was that Duryodhana made a gambling wager with Yudhishthira. But Duryodhana had dice that were made from the bones of Shakuni's relative or something like that. I forget how it works. And as a result, whenever he rolled the dice, he could make the dice go whatever number he wanted, So little by little, the Kauravas, they bet things against the Pandavas, and the Pandavas bet their royal ornaments and their gold and their properties and everything, and they lost everything because Duryodhana was letting, Shakuni throw the dice, and he kept winning everything. And so finally, they didn't have anything left. He said, well, you can always wager yourselves. And so the Pandava says, all right, so it's us. He said, well, if you win this last time, you'll get everything back that you've lost. But if you lose, you're our slaves forever, So Yudhishthira said, okay, so they rolled in. Spoiler alert, it happened again. They lost everything. So after that happened, then Duryodhana said, but you actually have one left thing, that you still have your wife, Draupadi, so you could wager her. And so everybody said, no, but Yudhishthira said, all right. So they wagered Draupadi, and they lost again. And so that's when Duryodhana said, well, you should go get Draupadi then and bring her out here now that we've won her, So they brought her out. And then, Dushasana tries to unrobe Draupadi. And because, now she's property of the Kauravas, So he's trying to unrobe her. But Krishna supplies an infinite sari. And so he keeps some kind of cloth maker's store or something like that. He keeps pulling cloth and it never comes undone, just more and more cloth appearing. And so nothing happens. And but Bhimasena is saying, I'm going, these are the vows that Bhimasena made, that he would kill all of Dhritarashtra's 100 sons. And guess what? He did it.
Yeah, every single one.
Every single one. And he would break Duryodhana's thigh because Duryodhana is showing Draupadi his thigh in a kind of a, lewd way, So he would break Duryodhana's thigh, and he would tear open Duryodhana's chest and pry out his heart and drink his blood.
Wasn't it Dushasana's chest? That all about Dushasana?
No, it was. I think it was Duryodhana.
Because he didn't do that. With
Maybe. No, I'll have to take a look at it.
Dushasana's hand, he broke it.
Because Duryodhana was left alive in the end, and he was lying there just bleeding out.
Right.
But Dushasana, he was ripped, and he did that. He put it on his lips at least.
Right. Maybe it was
He did that
Dushasana.
with Dushasana.
I could have made that mistake, but I thought that was. Let me see what Burijan says here quickly, because he was the one that I took the source from.
They are saying the name of almost like saying Duryodhana, Dushasana. I said Duryodhana, Dushasana name almost like I say.
No, you're right. It says Dushasana. I made a mistake there. It's not Duryodhana, it's Dushasana. So that's what. I'll change that. So that one's wrong. So they're asking about this, and this question is in your Purvasvadhyaya. Now we'll go here to these are signs of victory for the Pandavas. The blowing of the conch shells, because they shattered the hearts of the Kauravas. Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas. The goddess of fortune is on the side of the Pandavas. Arjuna's chariot was donated by Agni. Krishna controlled Arjuna's senses directly, Arjuna is called Dhananjaya, or winner of wealth. So Bhima is called Vrikodara, or great eater and performer of Herculean tasks. So Prabhupada says in the purport that these are good qualities, but there were no people with these kind of qualities on the Kauravas side. So this is like that. And then it said that Sanjaya predicted that the Kauravas would lose, and Arjuna had the flag of Hanuman. So,
That's a winning sign.
right. So these are some of the reasons or signs of victory for the Pandavas. So, and we're going to come back to this because this is an important thing, but we're going to go very quickly here. These are the reasons not to fight that Arjuna had. Some of these are in chapter 2, but there are 5 big reasons for Arjuna not to fight: compassion, enjoyment, fear of sinful reaction, destruction of dynasty, and indecision. And here I also have the various verses where it talks about these. Now, they mention this also in your student handbook, but I have more verses that I saw that, some of these kind of are good for more than one thing. Some of these verses are not just about compassion, but about something else as well. So there's some overlap here. But these are the 5 things. I always think of them as CEDFI, CEDFI. I usually switch 3 and 4 around, but that's the way I usually remember it. Compassion, C, E is enjoyment, D is destruction of dynasty, F is fear of sinful reaction, I is indecision. So that's the way I think. Somewhere or other, even though it's a nonsense word, I somehow am able to remember it. But you can find some other way, or whatever way you want to remember it. That's how I remember it. So these are Arjuna's reasons not to fight. Okay. And these are some of our characters from the Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata. We have the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev. Then we have the Kauravas, or the Dhartarashtras, Duryodhana, Dushasana, 98 other brothers. And then we have Krishna, Bhishma, Dronacharya, Karna, Ashvatthama, Drishtadyumna, Dhritarashtra, and Sanjaya. So these names tend to overwhelm people when you first come into Bhagavad Gita. I think that's why most people never read the Bhagavad Gita. They go, wow, I just went out, I was going to the store and I met this guy with a book and he was wearing this weird yellow outfit and, he told me this was a book that would answer all my questions, Bhagavad Gita. Wow, let me just check it out. I just finished eating and Sanjaya said, dirty, and who is Durdigo? I think I'll put this on the shelf. I think that happened to a lot of people. So don't let these names scare you. That there's a bunch of names, but after a while you start to figure out who these people are. And after the first chapter, you really don't hear anybody talking about them. You only hear Krishna and Arjuna talking to each other. So it doesn't really matter after the first chapter. But at any rate, this is our cast of characters in the Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata. And these are the 6 types of aggressors. Prabhupada mentions them in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The poison giver, one who sets fire to the house, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another land, one who kidnaps a wife. And these are in first chapter, text 36 in the purport.
What's the number fourth one?
What's that?
Number 4th one?
No, 136.
No, I said, what is the number 4th one?
Plunders.
Plunders.
Yeah, means
What does mean?
Plunders. Means to steal. Plunder. One who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another's land, one who kidnaps a wife. So these are all the various...
Maharaj, excuse me, in Bhagavad Gita says that if somebody do these things, if you does this thing, you can kill them, you're not making any sin.
Right. That's what it's saying, that that in the time of the Mahabharata, that it was...
No sin, but still go to jail.
Yeah. Who does any of these things, right?
Law is not on you. There is country, so there is a constitution. There is justice, just person, and let them do their job. So king not going to go to the jail when king's order is coming. So let the kings implement his order. But king is not nowadays.
That's why, even the devotee, they do that too.
Or you do that discreetly.
You think that's
Don't get caught.
And here we're going to do the last little bit here of this family tradition. This is the consequences of the destruction. This is, after Arjuna has said, I'm not going to fight, he gives Krishna the reasons why he wouldn't fight. And he's saying this is what happens. If we have this war, the men will die. Okay, if the men die on the battlefield, this is the follow-up. Family tradition will be vanquished, 139. The family will be involved in irreligion, 139. Women will become polluted, 140. Unwanted progeny, 140. Hellish life and society for all, 141. Departed ancestors no longer offered food, 141. And then community projects and family welfare devastated, 142. So these are the consequences of destruction of dynasty, which Arjuna envisions will happen if they fight this unjust war. And we've said, some of the reasons why Arjuna felt that it wasn't a good thing to fight. And as we'll find out, he goes on to say some of these same things in chapter 2. And then early on, then Krishna, he runs out of things and he says, Krishna, I want to hear what you want to say, but by the way, I'm not going to fight. And so Krishna says, all right, well, let me explain to you. You're speaking learned words, but you're saying you're mourning for what's not worthy of grief. So that'll happen. But that's tomorrow. So at least this is what we're going to look at today. And now I have a fake test for you all. Fake test. So let me get the URL for it, and then I will drop it in the mailbox. This is really interesting. I can get on I can stay with Zoom, but I can't get online.
Yeah, I can't get online either. There's no...
Some problem.
Yeah.
Something's wrong, but it's strange that the... well, you all might be saved from...
If you want, I can give you the hotspot if it will work a little bit.
You have a hotspot?
I have a hotspot. I can give you. You can.
Okay. Let me. What?
All of us can't connect.
No, not all of us. At least Maharaj can connect.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. That if the rest of you can't connect, it's just the same. It won't work either, because not only do I need to connect, but you all need to connect as well, because this is one of those days. So I guess we're just going to have to, I'll give you the test later on after the class, and you can take it at your own leisure before tomorrow, because we're not going to be able to...
See you next time, Maharaj.
2 o'clock? Yes, sir. We have
Is this one of those things where it logs me out every certain amount of time just because of the hell of it? Oh, this is dumb. So I'm on now. Or maybe not. Let's see. Yeah.
I get connected.
Yeah. This evidently the way this works is that you log on for a certain amount of time and it automatically logs you out for no good reason, and then you have to log on again.
So you can drop.
So now,
Or you will drop it later.
let me see what happens now if I can. I can drop it at least, and you all can see if you can get online or not, or if you can get to the.
You can send to WhatsApp.
Yeah, just a second.
Zoom can see. Can they see what's going on?
This screen is already shared, so they can see what's going on.
Google Drive. Now I got Google Drive. I'm with the wrong people. Chandra Swami Educational. Password, yes. Well, that's not what I want. That's right. That's not what I want. striking the wrong thing. All right.
Right, all the way down. Yeah, this one.
I must not be in the account that I think I'm in. Trying to figure out what account I have to be in. Oh, I'm not in the account that I think I am. I'm in Crystal Swarovski, which is not the account I want. What is going wrong here? Yeah. I can't get to the account that I want. I'm getting some... What's that?
No, I don't know.
What's happening?
We have Harinam today.
Oh, I see.
Brooklyn Ridge.
Prabhupada started reading the first day.
Retreat in Tompkins.
Function escape from not the book.
No, I'm saying we have today on Brooklyn Ridge. No, from this temple.
No, what are the function escape? Brooklyn Ridge. আমি তো বলি না টেক্সট আপনারা কি বুঝতে
আমাকে কালকে তো মেসেজ করাইছে আমাদের সমস্ত নাম হতে এই যে ইংলিশ নাম হতে
Yes. In the park.
Why does it always take me to the weirdest thing? No. There it is, finally. Okay, there it is. It's see if you can get online or not. I just dropped it on your Bhagavad Gita.
On the phone.
I have to come back. Oh, you said it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
See if you can get on.
After I do it, I can submit right here.
Right. It's there. You can take the.
Well, somebody is going to look at mine then.
What's that?
Somebody, if I drop it here, my answer, somebody is going to catch it from here. Or I have to do it personally to you.
No, it's a Google Doc. It's a Google test, actually.
Okay.
So that means what you do will only be seen by you, and it will, as far as I understand it, it'll be graded immediately.
Is in the WhatsApp group, you just read it?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And if you can't get on now, you can do this later on at your own
Yeah, we
leisure.
have
Because I think this should work. And if it does work, that means that you can do it anytime. And by the way, this test it's not for grades. So it's just for you. And you can see how well you did, how well you remembered. So I've dropped the URL for the Google test. If you click on it, you'll see there's, I don't know, something like 7-10 questions. I forget what it is.
It asks for your email. Do we have to?
Yeah, you have to put your email in. That way you can't do it twice, you know.
Oh, okay.
That's why they want your email. And it tells me who it is, too. That's how you add your name. And I believe the way it works is once you you go to this URL and you take this test, it's all true and false.
Yeah.
And so there's only two possibilities, you know. And then when you check either true or false, it'll tell you at the very end whether you were right or not. And it'll tell you what the right answers were. So this is your fake test. All right, so it's just after 2 now. Maybe I can figure out. I apologize to everyone for all the technical difficulties we went through today. I'm hoping that I can figure out how this all works better next week, you know. But
So we have class tomorrow 6:30.
yeah, right. But tomorrow will be total 100% Zoom. So what's that?
Please bless us that we can.
Bhadram Te Hari.
How many questions are there altogether?
Maharaj always give 100 questions.
No, there's not 100.
Not in this one, the mock test.
No. This is Maharaj always give 100 or 65.
Points. There's 25 questions.
Or 25 good.
There's 100 points, but only 25 questions. That means each question is worth 4 points.
Okay, Maharaj, thank you. I did not get it, Maharaj, because I didn't open my Google account. I just got the new phone. I will
Oh, okay. All right. So,
See you. I'm rushing because I'm coming back.
All right.
I'm looking in the lobby. They should
so my obeisance to all of our devotees online there, and Bhaktavatsal and Yarun, and to all of our devotees downstairs here. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 6:30 on Zoom. Nobody here, everybody on.
I am working tomorrow. I cannot attend, it's okay?
Well, you have to then watch the video.
What's the video?
Yeah. What's that?
When I come back, then I will from work. I can watch the
At 6:30?